Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Sicleri. I'm the head of client intelligence at State Street. So I'm part of a team of data scientists and quantitative analysts, and we all share one goal, essentially, of providing insight into State Street's performance against our clients' expectations and our service level agreements. We're part of a newly formed, broader team at State Street called Client Delivery Management. We're collectively responsible for making sure that State Street is essentially meeting or exceeding our clients' SLAs. So I know there's some clients in the audience today, so that's what we do. So before I go into more information, I just want to start with a quick show of hands from anyone in the audience that knows or has heard of State Street before today. Okay, a good number of people, great. That's a good start. So who actually knows what we do? Okay, smaller number of people. Okay, but who actually knows what we really do on a day-to-day basis? The nuts and bolts, right? So no. So for those of you that don't know about State Street, we're actually a 225-year-old bank. Like a lot of banks, our heritage is rooted in the maritime trade. So in 1904, we were actually appointed the first custodian of the first U.S. mutual fund. In 1993, we created the first ever exchange-traded fund. So that's kind of ubiquitous today. Everyone knows what ETFs are. That wasn't always the case. We created the first. Today, we're a company that's over 38,000 people globally. We're actually the world's largest custodian bank. We took that title this year. And we're responsible, just to put that into perspective, for $34 trillion in assets, and that's roughly 10% of the world's assets. So we're a big company. We service about 41% of all mutual funds. So all that strung together, it sounds pretty impressive. It's meant to. This is our marketing deck. So we share this with prospective clients. But when you take away the stats, what we really do is we process data. So every day we process massive amounts of data to support our clients across the back, middle, and even the front office of some of their financial operations. So it's an incredibly complicated and complex operation. It generates petabytes of data altogether. So our role in client intelligence is to take that data, and analyze it and really understand our clients' day-to-day experience. So I have to say it's really interesting and engaging work. I like it a lot. But it's a difficult job. Right? It's difficult for a few different reasons. It's difficult because our operation is complicated. It's nuanced. It's difficult because the data sets that we work with are really, really large. And it's difficult, and this is, I think, something that's not unique to us. It's difficult because it isn't that long ago that State Street was a paper-based company. So if anyone knows what fund accounting is, right, the general ledger, like think Bob Cratchit, like writing in a book, right? And it wasn't that long ago that we were actually doing that work on paper, right? And it's still part of our culture. So adoption of new tools like Tableau for us, and I'm sure for some of you if you're here in today's session, hasn't been instantaneous, right? It's been a very long journey. For our team, it's been about a journey of 4 years so far. So if you're here today and you're here today to hear me talk about executive engagement, you're probably in a similar situation to where we were 4 years ago. So maybe you feel that senior management doesn't get it. Maybe you feel like the tools that you're developing aren't appreciated. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our team's journey, how we've been able to overcome some of these barriers to adoption, first in the organization and ultimately at the executive level. So if you're here today to look at some cool dashboards, unfortunately I can't share any of that with you. It's all proprietary internal stuff. I also don't have a lot to share in terms of architecture performance, but executive engagement, hopefully I'm your guy. So starting from the beginning, our team started about 4 years ago. We were in the same position as many similar teams at State Street, and probably some of you in the audience today. So we were primarily working in Excel and PowerPoint. And our primary responsibility at the time was to produce something called a workload profile in support of a large transformation initiative. If you follow State Street, for some of you that may do that for some reason, you may know that about 5 years ago we had a large transformation initiative called IT and Operations Transformation. Huge initiative, announced publicly to the street, $500 million in savings, really big initiative. We did a lot of the work at the time, the analysis work, supporting those strategic initiatives, kind of understanding what the benefits were and what the costs were. So out of all the types of analysis that we did, one piece of work that we did that took up a lot of our time was called a workload profile. Is anyone here in consulting? Right? So maybe some of you maybe know what a workload profile is. But for the benefit of people that don't know what a workload profile is, essentially is you take the demand of a person's job and you take the demand of an entire group and you look at the peaks and the valleys of the work that they're responsible for they're delivering on a day-to-day basis, and you restructure the work to make it more efficient. So instead of one team having big peaks and valleys, you have one team that kind of levels out across everything. So we did a lot of that work. We ended up doing dozens and dozens of workload profiles, really repetitive, really not interesting work at all. And what ended up happening was essentially a cottage industry started to form in our team. There were so many teams that needed the type of work that we did, and there were so many questions that needed to be answered that we realized something needed to change. Right? We either needed to increase our staff significantly in order to keep up with demand, or we had to do something different. So adding to staff wasn't an option for us, so we had to find a different way. We ended up settling on, you guys can probably guess it, right, a data visualization tool called Tableau. At the time, it was a complete game changer for us. This is 4 years ago. We were now able to create reusable workload profiles. I mean, I don't need to convince you guys the value of Tableau, but we created reusable workload profiles that were interactive, and they allowed us to answer our clients' questions in real time rather than having to come back to them in 2 to 4 days. So previously, the work cycle was we would go to a client, we'd present them a PowerPoint, they would ask us some questions, we'd say, those are great questions, we'd go back, we'd create a new PowerPoint, we'd come back to them in 2 to 4 days, and then they would have more questions for us, right? And then we'd come back, and it would just repeat itself. Completely unsustainable. So I mention this specifically because that's the point that I want to emphasize. The dashboards that we were creating, they looked really good. So Tableau has a way of being impressive in and of itself, right? So you put a Tableau dashboard in front of someone who's never seen Tableau before, you click on the dashboard, the visualization updates, and it's like they don't understand what's just happened, right? Their minds are blown, right? But the look and feel of the dashboard wasn't what sold it ultimately for our clients. What sold Tableau for our clients was that we were able to give them results, answers to their questions in real time, in the room, as they asked them, right? And that's what ultimately allowed us to crawl our way out of PowerPoint hell. So some of you who are using Tableau may find that you still need to put Tableau into PowerPoints. What ended up being the trigger for us to get away from that was the fact that we could give these users something that they hadn't been able to have before, and that's real-time access to information. So don't get me wrong, I mean, the look and feel of the dashboard's nice. It definitely helps with adoption. That wow factor definitely helps us. But I think it's also what kind of trips some people up sometimes. They've created this new cool dashboard, right? It's really impressive to them. And they don't really understand why no one wants to use it. The senior managers want to keep using their spreadsheets. So who's in that situation, right? Senior managers want to use spreadsheets. CEO wants it in a table, right? Send it to me in an email, a table. Cutting edge stuff, right? But that's really because pretty dashboards, they're great, but they can't stand on their own, right? It has to deliver something that's valuable to your client, right? Above and beyond the way that they currently get this information. If you're getting a table in an email, the value there is that it's right there at your fingertips. You don't need to go click through things. So that's what everyone in this audience, if you're here today thinking about executive engagement, that's what I want you to think about, right, when it comes to Tableau, or any other kind of analysis for that matter. Right? It's a key component for getting engagement from senior management. So ask yourself, right, how is this better than what they currently use, right? From their perspective. It might be better technically, you know that, right? But how is it better from their perspective? Right? How will this directly change their day-to-day? What tangible, measurable business value does this provide to your audience? So again, if you're here today because you're struggling to get engagement from senior management, it may be because that you haven't answered that question as clearly as you may need to. Okay, so this question about business value is key, and it doesn't always have to translate into increased efficiency, which is what I gave in the first example. So there are three areas that I like to focus on with my team when I meet with my team. Right? Those areas are reducing cost, right? They're pretty basic, right? Reducing cost, increasing revenue, or reducing risk. Right? Our team, right, we don't take anything on if it doesn't check one of those three boxes. If it doesn't check one of those three boxes, we don't work on it. So in the next example I'm going to give you, I'm going to talk about how we use Tableau at State Street to reduce and to manage risk. So as a bank, State Street's subject to some of the regulations and regulators that other banks are subject to. We meet regularly with the Federal Reserve. Had the pleasure in being in some of those meetings. It's very important work, right? It is important. The Fed is very attentive to detail. You sit in the meeting, they all have their notebooks out. They write copious notes, which is good. They should be attentive to detail. It's their job. And they're always interested in understanding how we are positioning ourselves to manage risk. Right? Everyone remembers the financial crisis. Right? But who here is familiar with the European debt crisis? Just a few, right? You'll know when I mention. So, thanks to my role, I'm familiar with it. Right? The European debt crisis, you'll remember it when I say it. It's when several Eurozone members were unable to repay or refinance, potentially unable to repay or refinance their government debt. So people remember Greece, right? All over the news, Greece, Spain, Italy. So during that time, it was a fairly unique situation for us in our role. There was the possibility that an entire market, an entire country would basically shut down on any given day. So in response to that type of risk, State Street needed a new tool to be able to manage in that environment. And we already had the ability to pull reporting out of our custody system, so anyone who's a State Street client, they know we have a tool. My State Street, you can get custody data real time. It's fantastic. But the process to create a management view that cut across all of our clients was really manual. It actually took us about 4 hours, believe it or not, to pull custody data for the country of Greece and to show management, here's what our exposure is today. We had to pull this data down from our custody systems, process it manually in Excel, put it together in a deck, and then send it via email to management so they had their table. At the time, the team that was responsible for managing risk actually reached out to us because we had been building a reputation as a team at State Street that knew how to do cool things with data, thanks to Tableau. And even though it wasn't our area of responsibility, we weren't responsible for managing risk, we knew that it was important for the company, and we knew that it was impactful to do this work. So in the end, what we ended up doing is we helped this team, again, not our team, but we helped this team create a Tableau dashboard that provided near real-time visibility into assets under custody in any market globally. So we've gone from taking 4 hours to manually produce reporting for one country to point-and-click real-time visibility into any country globally. We used data that was already available in the custody platform. So this is data that was already there. Right? We didn't create the data. We set up a pretty simple Golden Gate replication, replicated the data over to a data warehouse in a secure environment, and then we put a Tableau dashboard on top of that. And now, right now, senior managers have the ability through Tableau Server to go in, log into Server, and then get this information aggregated for any market. This capability went so far as to be presented to the Fed in one of those meetings that I mentioned. And as expected, they really, really liked it. They liked what they saw. And we actually use this tool, the team that we gave this tool to, uses it today for Brexit, so when they want to see exposure there. And I like this example for a couple of reasons. One, the dashboard. The dashboard kind of it didn't look very good, right? It was just a table. And I like that. Don't get me wrong, it was clean, it was professional, but it was very to the point. And that's because our focus in this use case was not on creating a spectacular Tableau visualization. It was around how Tableau could make this data more readily available for senior management, because that was the business value, right? The business value wasn't in the cool visualization. The business value was in making the data available in an easy way. One of the other reasons I like this example is it wasn't our area of responsibility. We're not responsible for managing merit risk. We weren't responsible then, we aren't responsible now, but we knew it was important to State Street. So we knew we could bring a lot of value to this process. So we seized on that opportunity to gain some collective visibility for us and for them. And three, I like this example because it shows how our team was starting to build on our past success. Right? We had become kind of a known player at State Street. People were starting to seek us out for our expertise. And in the end, the collective team, so both of our teams, ended up getting some mutual benefit out of the partnership. So my point in this example is that it's hard to make business value in a vacuum, right? You can't do it alone. Maybe you haven't found the use case that will bring the right level of visibility for you and your team in your current role, but maybe that's because the use case that's going to get you to that next level isn't part of your core team's responsibility. So if you're part of a bigger organization, which I think a lot of you are if you're talking about executive engagement, I'd encourage you to take an opportunity to look for partners in other parts of the organization that can help you to elevate the visibility of what you're doing. If you're looking for a way to increase your team's visibility, think about where you might have similar opportunities for partnerships. Teams that have the exposure but don't necessarily have that data capability that you guys have. So that's how we kind of tapped into that for ourselves. So fast forward another year in our team's journey. We continue to engage with teams in this model of looking for other opportunities at State Street to increase adoption, to increase utilization, and we continue to build and build on our success. We'd created some significant time savings in our own team. We'd helped to build some tools at the bank that helped to manage risk, but we hadn't quite gotten to the point where we were directly helping to inform strategic decisions at State Street. So we put on like an active search for this kind of a use case. Again, we were looking at other teams to help us find that business case. And our next objective was to find a case where we directly improved our ability to make a business decision. So we found that opportunity with our internal network management team. So network management's not IT. Network management in a custodian context is like how you might have a contractor and then your contractor has subcontractors. At State Street, we have sub-custodians in markets where the markets aren't big enough or the regulations are too complex where we just don't want to be there. We don't have the necessary footprint to be there. So our network management team is responsible for managing that network of sub-custodians. And in every market, we have usually two sub-custodians. There's a primary and a secondary. And in most of these markets, we went through an initiative like 2 years ago to go through significant negotiations with our sub-custodians. So we know that we needed to renegotiate with our sub-custodians. I don't know if there are any in the room here, but sorry. And we knew that we had ultimately millions of dollars that could be saved through these negotiations. Right? And we wanted to see how we, in the client intelligence, at the time we were a different team, but it doesn't matter, how we could help them inform their decisions using data by giving them better access to data. Again, it was that business problem. They had the platform to make that problem, to make that decision, and they didn't have the necessary tools to get access to the data in the way that we could. We could provide them better data, so we knew that we had a value to provide for them. We partnered with the network management team. We ended up building a series of dashboards that gave them a consolidated view into their sub-custodian relationship, so all of the information that they used to manage this relationship into one dashboard. We replaced more than a few dozen, I'd say, Excel spreadsheets. So the way that they got data before, like they literally were getting an email that had Excel spreadsheets, and I'm not kidding you, the email had a dozen Excel spreadsheets in it, each with a different cut of view of information. It was just the data for that month. So if they wanted to see trends, they had to go and pick the email from the month before and then pick the email from the month before that. I'm not kidding, right? And pull it all together and to look at trends. So we gave them a dashboard that had all of this information in one place, and then they could now see trend information in one place in one tool. So we ultimately shared these dashboards with the sub-custodians as well. So it became a tool for us to communicate back to them their performance, so performance data, financial performance, operational performance, and even qualitative feedback that we were collecting, because our organization interfaces with their organization at the junior levels and at the senior levels. And we were collecting qualitative feedback as well around the responsiveness. So we brought this all together into one place so they could see information about trade processing. What do our trade processors say about their performance in settling trades? What is the performance or information on how much we pay to settle trades and information? So in this example, I like this example because we've officially crossed over into that threshold of delivering executive dashboards. We've made it, right? So the network managers, senior network managers were previously getting this data from Excel, from email, and now they're getting it in Tableau. So they finally saw the benefit, again, because it had direct impact, direct business value on them. There we go. So with that said, we had a lot of success. We're continuing to build on that success. We had a reputation as being a team that could get things done, and a reputation for building analysis that was a cut above. So I would encourage you guys to continue to build on that reputation. And eventually, we found an opportunity to take that next step, to really go big, bigger than we've gone before. So our current CEO, again, for all the State Street followers out there, right, is retiring at the end of this year. It was announced at the end of last year, and our new CEO, Ronald Handley, was identified as his successor. So Ron is part of actually State Street's leadership team, an internal promotion. It's great. And he was looking for a way to understand, he's very client-oriented, and he wanted to understand how we were performing against our client SLAs on not just a monthly basis, because we were already doing it monthly, but he wanted to know every day, right? Where did we fall down on delivering for our clients every day so that he could be plugged into that pulse, so that he could manage it as best as he could? That's not a capability that existed prior. I can't go into too much detail about exactly what's included in the dashboard or too much detail around what that performance information includes. But I can tell you a few things that I can tell you. Right? So the first version of this report is as you would have expected it to be. It was Excel, right? Big surprise. And it was a really manual process to pull this information together. It was actually a person's full-time job to produce this report on a daily basis. So they would go out to all of the teams, collect this information, bring it all together into one Excel report, and then email it to our president and our CEO on a daily basis. And then you get this report. It was Excel dashboard. It didn't really have much information in it. And I'm not saying anything bad about the people that pulled that together. They did a great job given the tools that they had. But here's where the management came to us. So they knew they wanted something more. They knew they wanted more than just Excel. It was an Excel table. It had like all the things that we do and all the clients that we do it for. And it was basically like yellow or red. Did we mess something up? Right? No idea how bad we may have messed it up or how well we did, or nothing to put it in context. So because of our past success and because of our reputation for partnering across the organization, we were tapped to do this, to bring this from essentially the Stone Age into the technology age. So in the end, we actually now deliver an executive level Tableau dashboard to our CEO and our president on a daily basis. It has all this information, rich information, drill down information available to them on a day-to-day basis. There's no magic bullet to our success. It's not a particularly amazing dashboard. I think it looks good. But the point that I'm trying to make in the examples that I'm giving is that the journey to getting executive engagement, it's a process. It's a process of picking the right use cases, the ones that provide value. It's a process of continuing to build on your success. It's a process of having strong partnerships in the organization. So if you're looking for advice, I think that's the advice that I'd give you. So with that said, I'm going to share a little bit of information on our lessons learned. Right? So what did we learn in this process of getting engagement from executive management? So I can tell you some of the lessons that I've learned. Maybe that helps you. Hopefully it helps you. But I like to break this down into 3 themes when I talk with my team. The 3 themes that I think are the most important themes that we can focus on as a team delivering analysis for executives. So those themes are, again, it's not a magic bullet here. So just be accurate, right? Be clear, and be concise with the information that you're presenting. Right? Accuracy is first and foremost. It may seem simple, right? It may seem obvious, but sometimes we find that we rush things. We're under a lot of pressure to deliver things for executives, and we want to deliver it fast, and we want to deliver it, and we want to make it look good. But no one really cares how fast you do something. No one cares how good it looks if it's not right. So accuracy is first and foremost. Again, it may seem obvious, but I think sometimes it's lost. The second is to be clear in how you communicate, both with your team and with your stakeholders. There's a lot of pressure when you reach the executive level to deliver something new, to deliver it fast, to deliver impactful analysis. So being clear in how you communicate expectations across your team, but also being clear in how you communicate to your executives is really important, so that your executives aren't putting unfair pressure on you, and then you're then in turn putting that unfair pressure onto your team. You need to communicate both ways. And finally, and this one's kind of the trickiest one, is being concise in how you share information in your report, right? Everyone here has seen this dashboard, right? This dashboard that has 1 million charts and 1 million colors, and it looks like someone took a bag of Skittles and they dumped it out on a piece of paper, right? That dashboard can be really valuable, right? It can be really valuable to someone who knows the data and really knows how to use it, right? But it's not going to be valuable to your executive, right? They need something that's concise. It needs to be both brief and complete, right? And informative. So that actually can be really challenging. It's one of the things that we struggle with even today. Those are some of the things that we've done to be successful, but I also want to talk a little bit about, because I think it's equally important, some of the things that you need to avoid, right? And it kind of falls under the category of avoiding the noise. Right? So if you're doing something new in your organization, if you're doing something different, people are going to start to complain, cast doubt, right? They want the data that they currently get today. They don't want to change. You may get discouraged sometimes when someone says, well, we shouldn't use Tableau, or we shouldn't do it this way, we shouldn't think about it this way. But I've actually found that that's a sign that you're doing something right when someone's telling you you're doing it wrong. Just because something's been measured a certain way for the past several years doesn't mean it's the right way to measure it. So I'll give an internal example here because I think it's really powerful. It's something we call straight-through processing. It's not anything anyone would know outside of State Street. But essentially what it translates to is our electronic processing rate. So we get a trade, a security trade from our client, and the question is, can we execute that trade without someone actually manually intervening to fix it? It just gets processed by a system straight through processing. Right? So for years, straight-through processing was our most important measure at State Street, and that's because a significant number of our trades required manual intervention. People would send us trades. Some people still send us trades in fax, if you believe that, like the paper thing that goes through the phone. Yeah. And sorry if there are any clients in the room that do that. Sorry, this one right there. But we understand the reasons for that. So the thing is, though, that as we increased our STP rate, the STP, straight-through processing rate, sorry guys, acronyms. We have a disease at State Street with acronyms. As we increased that rate, the STP rate itself kind of became less important. If you're 99.99% electronic processing, Oh, yeah, there, yeah. I don't have many slides, guys, sorry. If you're 99.9% straight through processing, you have to think about it differently, right? Because if we're 99.9% processing, we still have an organization of 38,000 people. What are those people doing, right? And we still mess up from time to time for our clients. So how do we measure the impact of what happens when we do make a mistake? So we realized that it was equally as important now that we reached that point of 99.9% to focus on the 0.1% of things that didn't process, right? But when we started doing that, people lost their minds. People didn't want to be shown as red, right, when they were 99.9% green. Oh, 99.9% green. Well, it'll be that 0.1%. You guys missed a trade that was an $80 million, FX trade, and we lost, $3 million on it because of that. And so you have to think differently. So when you think differently, people are going to complain, but it's also a sign that you're doing something right. And the personal example that you can use, right? If Amazon is 99.9% in delivering your packages on time, but that 0.1%, right? It matters whether you were looking for an extra USB cable or like the last-minute gift that you ordered for your wife on Amazon, right? Big difference. I didn't do that. I've never done that. Yeah, seriously. So people are going to challenge the work that you do. You should expect that as you're trying to change a culture in your organization. Again, it's a sign that you're doing something right. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you are going to run into people that are overly eager to get onto the Tableau bandwagon. So for a period of time, we still see this today. People come to us and they use Tableau as a verb in their requests. So who's experienced that, right? Hey, can you guys Tableau this for me? That'd be great, right? So 99 times out of 100, when someone asks you to Tableau something, right, not worth your time. Right? Usually, it's someone who has a report that takes a lot of time for them personally to produce, and wouldn't it be great if you did it for them? Right? So there's one piece of advice that I can leave you with today. If you've invested a lot of time in building your brand and doing more impactful analysis, building your personal reputation, right? Don't Tableau it. If someone tells you to Tableau something, don't Tableau it. It's these kinds of requests. Again, usually someone thinks they can fix a problem by just putting it into Tableau. I see this now with machine learning, right? People come to you, can we machine learn this? And yeah, you don't know what to say. So again, I don't have any magic to share with you guys, unfortunately. But that's our journey. That's what's been successful for us. That's how we've been able to get some executive engagement. That's how we've gone from doing small Tableau dashboards and direct support of our work to now delivering a daily report for the CEO. It was a journey for us, 4 years. Right? There's no quick solution. If anyone here does it faster, great, good for you. Expect that the people are going to deny what you're doing. They're going to challenge what you do. That's really the first step to knowing that you're doing something right. Are you doing something different? If you feel like it's broken in your organization, that people are using tools that aren't impactful, that could be generating more value, right? If you're doing something different, people are complaining, that's a sign that you're doing something right, I think. And focus on demonstrating the business value, the impact of what you're doing. It's when you demonstrate business value, that's when people will actually engage, right? So you show them something better than what they currently use, like the CEO, the executive that wants it in a table, that wants it in Excel. They want it that way because they feel that there's value in having that information in a way that's clean and easy to understand. So you need to figure out what their real requirements are, what are they looking for, and then figure out a way to deliver it for them in Tableau that's better, right? And that's when you can go big. That's when you can get that executive level engagement, right? And that's what I think everyone here is looking for. So with that, I have plenty of time for some questions, and happy to answer them.
So, you talk about going big and how important it is, and obviously you're talking about being highlighted at the top of the organisation. How do you manage the data quality side of things? Because obviously the risk of things being wrong, the implications of those things being wrong is obviously much, much greater when you're at the top of the organisation.
Yeah, I mean, that's accuracy, right? So when you're at the executive level, the level of expectation is exponentially higher than when you're dealing with operational teams. Right? With an operational team, if you get the data wrong, right, they don't like that, but they understand that things happen, and you can work with them to fix the data, and you can send them the updated report the next day. The executive level, when something's wrong, right, they, if you're lucky enough, will come to you directly. If you're unlucky, they go to their person, and their person screams at you, oh, it's wrong. So it's really, really important. I think the best way to manage data quality is through strong partnerships. Right? So we don't actually produce any of the data that goes into our dashboard. We consume it. Right? And we have strong partnerships with each of these teams and clear expectations, clear roles around how we're consuming their data so that we're not ultimately sharing something that's wrong. So we're plugging into existing book of record that already exists. It's defined. We then translate that information and bring it into our dashboard. And having a strong relationship is really important for that.
How did you build your team? There's always a mix of you need, people that know Tableau but may not have business experience.
Yeah.
Or you might also have people who have business experience but they don't necessarily know Tableau.
So the question is how I built my team. Do I hire people that use Tableau or do I hire business people? I tend to hire business people. I have a couple of people that have joined my team that are Tableau experts, I'd say. There's a lot of value in that, but it's a lot, Tableau is an easy enough tool to learn. It's a lot easier for me to teach someone how to use Tableau. I can do that. But to teach someone the complex operation that is State Street, that's something that you really can only learn through experience. So we tend to hire business people.
Hi, great presentation, by the way. Thank you so much for your time. I have a question for you. You talked a lot about improving process and kind of duplicating reports to kind of streamline. How do you deal, or how have you guys dealt with providing that new report, that new dashboard, that new look on data that they've already seen before, and get them to also adopt the new functionalities that you can get with a new tool that they couldn't get before? I've seen kind of having issues saying like, oh, I just want the number. But it's like, well, now we have this tool that can do so much more. You should look at it another way.
Yeah, so that goes into designing a dashboard that's concise. So we try to make the dashboard, one, meet their core requirements. So whatever data they were getting before, we give it to them up front in the dashboard, and then we show them the additional capabilities that are available. So in the network management example, we gave them the view that they were currently getting in the Excel report as a view. And then we added in these other tabs that were a lot more valuable, right? So we kind of led them on like a breadcrumb trail. Like, oh, here's this view that you already get. That's great. Okay, we're happy. But oh, by the way, look at this other view. And eventually they learned, they overcame their discomfort with doing it differently.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown, USAA. I'm curious if y'all did any internal marketing of your success, like on a website, a share site, that would educate the rest of the organization to sort of elevate your offering, your capabilities?
That's a great question. To an extent, yes, we do have a website internally. We use SharePoint, and we have like case studies that we've listed. That tends to generate, so I talked about the two types of attention, the good type and the bad type. For us, the website has tended to kind of generate some of the bad attention, like, hey, can you Tableau this type of questions. What's really generated for us the successful, kind of productive building blocks of our success has been the word of mouth at the executive. So we present something to a senior audience member, like we meet their requirements, we exceed their requirements, and they then tell their colleagues, like, hey, we worked with the team over there and they did this great thing for us, you should go talk to them. And then we have that conversation about business value, and that's really what has been like our more productive pipeline for work.
Quick question, before you got people to adopt into Tableau, how much back-end work did you have to do to pull all your data into like a big data location, or just even accessing and getting to data?
Yeah, so at State Street, we have like petabytes of data. We built a lot of our infrastructure in like the 90s. So a lot of it is being kind of rebuilt now, actually. But a lot of mainframe technology, right? So if anyone here has had the pleasure of working with a mainframe, it's not a pleasure, It's really hard to get data out of it. So in a lot of cases, we ended up having to take data in very weird formats, like reports. We use a tool called Alteryx that would help us take mainframe reporting and ingest it for Tableau. It's been a really painful process. We're getting better as the organization modernizes the way that we do banking. There are more data marts available. We're in a lot better of a situation now than we were 4 years ago. But the very first business case that I put together was on income postings and whether or not they were being posted electronically or manually. And we put together these text files that were about 500 megabytes apiece, 500 megabyte text files of data, and we had to kind of parse them out. It was, has anyone seen a mainframe screen? Like if you know, like a Commodore screen, like a green screen, it looks like that. And it was screen print, so every page of data was just a screen print of the mainframe screen. So you had to parse it out. We used Alteryx for that.
Wondering if you had any success creating forward-thinking reports, so things that people aren't really asking for,
Yeah.
but you go ahead and you create it, you try to, maybe it's the build it and they will come mentality. Any
Yeah.
success or failure suggestions there? Because we're struggling with some of that right now.
So you're saying building, you're not talking about predictive analytics, you're talking about like building a report that you
Just
think
like
people will find valuable before
Yeah,
they
like
say.
a dashboard, for instance. Like
Yeah.
I'm in a QSR business, and so obviously you need new customers, and you should try to retain the ones before you lose them. But
Yeah.
nobody's asking us to build like a retention dashboard or
Yeah.
a new customer dashboard and what channels they're coming in.
Yeah.
But they want to know the success or failure of campaigns, just the black or white number at one point, not measured over time or anything. So we're trying to build those types of things, but it's not so successful so far. So I wonder if you had any suggestions or thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying that too. So this dashboard that I highlighted at the end of my session, it basically pulls in every area where we've fallen short of clients' expectations. And we are looking at that, and we're looking at client sentiment. So we have relationship managers and client service people that face off with the client on a day-to-day basis, and they tell us whether or not the client's happy or sad or mad. And we're trying to predict, based on this operational data, when a client's at risk of being mad with us, essentially. We're building that now. I mean, maybe if I come back next year, I'll talk about it, but we haven't figured that one out yet.
Hi, I have two questions. One is you talked about the business value. So when people come to you asking you to Tableau something, do you ask them to do the cost benefit, or how do you, actually weed those out? And then second of all, even though you're doing advanced analytics, it sounds like some of what you build then becomes more operational reporting. So
Yeah.
how do you transition that to someone else? How
Yes.
do you do that?
Yeah. So the first question, thankfully now our pipeline is healthy enough where we have to spend less time fending off the requests for work that we don't feel is valuable, because there's so much demand in this other area that we just don't have time for it. So we're lucky in some senses, but at the beginning there was a lot of managing executives and their expectations. So we try to have a dialogue about what they're really trying to accomplish, right? And 9 times out of 10, the conversation would end at, well, we're really trying to reduce this 2 hours that someone spends every month pulling this report together to 15 minutes. And then I have to have a nice conversation with them about how that doesn't really necessarily have a great ROI if we're going to spend 80 hours building it, and it's going to take how many years to recoup that investment. Yes, it is a conversation about return on investment. So try to figure out what it is that they're trying to accomplish, what it is they're trying to solve for, and then you can build on that for that dialogue. Good luck. In terms of, sorry, the second question was? Oh, right, yes, yeah. We do hand that off. So luckily enough, the tools that we use are easy enough to learn. As part of the development process, we do engage with the team that will eventually own what we build, and we hand it off to them. So we don't own everything. We don't own anything longer term. Everything that I gave you the example of and I walked through, we handed it off to the risk team. We handed it off to the network management team. We haven't handed off the executive report because client intelligence, we own that. But every other report that we've built, we've handed off to another team. Because we want to build cool things. We don't want to maintain it. Yeah.
So
So looking back on your journey over the last 4 years,
Oh.
If there was anything you could have done differently, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think I would have learned the business value lesson sooner. I did spend a lot of time building reporting that wasn't valuable because at the time we were trying to figure out our place and we were trying to figure out what we could do to impact the organization. So one example, we worked with a team in Europe, and they wanted us to automate some reporting that they were doing. We spent 3 months trying to get the data for that report. Again, a data challenge issue with State Street. And in the end, we ultimately weren't successful. We burnt a lot of energy trying to solve for something that wasn't really that valuable.
Lauren Fan from Western Alliance. How much time did you take actually training? Once you built something and you have that daily executive report, how much time did you spend with that executive?
Training them?
Training them.
Yeah. Okay, it depends on the executive. And I mean that in a lot of different ways, right? So some of the executives are really inquisitive and smart. That's not what I mean. They have an aptitude for data, right? You can give them a dashboard and they go at it, right? And I get a lot of interesting questions back. And some of them just want to be spoon-fed the data. And some of them just don't have time to click through the data. So for the executive that is really inquisitive and has the aptitude for data, we just give them the dashboard and then we kind of play defense as they throw questions at us. For the executive that doesn't have time, if they're senior enough, just depends on the level, I'll sit down with them one-on-one, or someone from my team will sit down with them one-on-one. We'll walk them through it, just give them a click through and let them answer questions. And for everyone in between, we do training sessions, for better or for worse, right? Here's the dashboard, here's what it is. We also talk to them about what it isn't, right? So it's important for them to understand that this is something, and it's also not this, so that they really have a clear understanding of what it is. And then we run those sessions and do Q&As and then handle anything else as they raise questions to us. They're not bashful about asking questions. Yeah.
Hey, so I do reporting as a part of like a large healthcare enterprise, and one of the problems that we face, very similar to your org, is with data quality. And did you find any sort of, let's call it checks in terms of when you're doing reporting at the executive level to help use their influence to affect, kind of go downstream from there, help them identify those issues and kind of work collectively to start addressing them?
Yeah, so the best thing that we do for data quality is we show them the data. Right, so when we have data quality issues, data that's missing, so one, I won't tell which data source. We have a data source where the amount of information that we have is really terrible, right? So we're supposed to have information on every issue that happens. In this one area, we get information on like 1-2% of the issues. It's a manual process. It's very ineffective. So whenever it happens, we escalate that to executive management. We say, this is what was missing, this is why it was missing, and we do a weekly summary of that to executive management. So we haven't quite fixed that one issue, but I think it's important to help senior management understand what's wrong with the data. Right? So a lot of times, and I don't know how it is at your organization, but executives think that the data is just there. Right? We have all this data, why can't we just use it? They don't really understand why it's a challenge. So we spend a lot of time helping them understand why there are challenges, right? Where the gaps in the data are, and how we need their help. So it's really important that when you bring that kind of an issue to executive management, that it's actionable. You're not just complaining. You're going to them with an action that they can take to improve the situation. So with the group, I won't mention the name, the action that we're taking with them is to get dedicated people assigned to work with us on improving the data quality. So we go to them, this data is bad. It's not just about the data being bad. here's what we need you to do specifically so that we can fix it.
Questions. One, do you use a Tableau server?
Yes.
And how do you show, or you talked about training a minute ago, are you training on the server in that environment when you're showing them how to use and interact with the data? And do they have editability?
So just viewer, yeah, so we train them on the viewer server. I feel like if we showed them Explorer, they might, like, I don't know. But we do our training at the executive level on viewer. And then the teams that we work with to hand stuff off to, we actually don't do a lot of training on desktop. We have Tableau do a lot of that for us. We direct people to the self-service resources, right? It's really good stuff out there. Everyone on my team is self-taught. We hire business people and we train them in Tableau, and they're all self-taught. It's a really easy tool to learn.
The training of new users when they come into your group or across the organization, and you just answered that, so thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question there, and I'll come back here.
Hi, Bill Pretty with T. Rowe Price. I'm very familiar with State Street. I was wondering, what do you guys use to manage either the workbooks or dashboards that you have? And you also mentioned Alteryx as something you do. Like, what do you use to manage that to let people know that there are dashboards out there? You might have an inventory of maybe it's 20 to 40 of them. What do you use to manage that, and then how do you get that message out to the people that in the organization that really would benefit from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So we historically have not been a team that manages reporting assets. We've historically been a team that builds them and gives them to other teams to manage. We're kind of going through some growing pains right now of going from a team that was just building stuff and handing it off to other people to deal with it, to actually managing it ourselves. I don't have a great answer. We're hiring someone on the team to help us with our content management strategy. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. Have you? No, All right. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think it's a challenge that we're faced with right now. We're actively trying to figure it out. When I meet with other teams at State Street, I talk about having the ability for us to share certified data sources, so that I know if I'm pulling in data, that it's gone through that quality check. I don't have to question it. And it's a challenge, for sure.
Hi, I'm Jamie Lahare from Whole Foods Market. And I was wondering if you could speak to the partnerships you mentioned earlier, and specifically the roles that other analytics teams played in your journey that weren't part of your team, but throughout the rest of the organization.
So, I mean, you can think of it like, so data's a challenge for us at State Street. It's a challenge for a lot of people in the organization. The data, the knowledge for how to interpret the data is not widely known. So we typically will partner with a team in two capacities. One, they're kind of like a data guide for us. Like we're on a hunt to find the right information, and they know where to find it. Right? They know how to find it. So we'll partner with them. They'll help us understand what the data means, how to interpret the data. We can build a dashboard, but without knowing what the data means, the dashboard doesn't mean anything. So that's one area where we partner with them. And then we partner with them in thinking through how this actually gets used or deployed to the target audience. So ultimately, they're the ones that are going to own it. You need to have them on board up front that they're going to own it, right? It depends on your team's model, right? If you're building things and managing it, it's different. But if you're building and deploying, start up front, be direct with them. I think this is a really impactful project. We should work on it together. But just so you know, like when it's done, you're going to own it. And if you have that conversation up front, it's way better than having it, because I've had it at the back end. It's not so good. Yeah.
Thanks for all your answers to the questions.
Yeah.
Mine is about something you had talked about previously, having the power to kind of do an ROI on which projects you accept, as well as you kind of just talked about passing it off to someone to making sure that they do something with it. Was that set up when you started, or is that something you had to completely figure out? And if so, were there any challenges, or how did you go about making sure it was a success?
We had to learn that on the fly, so that, I guess, is one of the things that I wish I knew going into it. Right? I assumed that if a senior vice president told me something was valuable, that it was valuable, right? Like, there's a certain amount of clout that comes with that title, right? So if they say it is benefit to doing this, I just assumed, oh, there must be benefit to doing this. They said it. But we learned that that wasn't the case all the time. They didn't quite understand what the tool could do or couldn't do. So we had to figure that out. We had to kind of understand what the questions were that we needed to ask to determine whether or not Tableau is just a tool, right? So does this tool like fit the case that's going to generate value for you, right? Is you going to hammer in the nail or hammer in the screw? It's just a tool, and we had to learn that. We had to kind of build that ourselves. So it didn't exist before. We had to build it. In terms of handing it off and kind of transitioning it to other teams, same as well. Some of the earlier conversations that I had around transitioning were conversations that I hadn't had up front. We had built the tool. We wanted to do this new cool other thing that had a lot of value, but we were stuck maintaining this tool that we had already built. So we knew that we were either going to continue to maintain this report for this group for no benefit to us, or we needed to transition it to them. So we had that conversation. We eventually got it transitioned, and then going forward, we had that conversation up front as part of a requirement for an engagement.
Yeah. I'm Wes Browning with VMware. I'm curious about your biggest challenges going forward. You've had several years of building your brand, generating your own oxygen at this point, it sounds like, successful. What do you see as your biggest challenges coming?
That one. Yeah, the data management, absolutely, right? Having people, empowering people to have the ability to work with certified data sets to do self-service analysis in an environment that's secure, right? In an environment that is performant, right? That's, I think, our biggest challenge. Right now, what we do works really well because we're doing it all ourselves, right? And we're pulling in the data from other teams, sometimes through brute force to get this data, like in that mainframe example that I gave. But if we have to get to the next level, I think we have to solve for that data management challenge, and it's something that we're actively trying to solve for now. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you all.